August 1542, a Spanish conquistador named Francisco de Orellana is drifting down an unknown waterway in a makeshift rotting boat. He is starving, desperate, and entirely lost. Months earlier, he had joined a massive expedition to find El Dorado, the legendary city of gold. When they ran out of food in the dense jungles of South America, Orellana separated from his commander to find supplies. Instead, he found a nightmare. He and his men were swept away by a river that simply refused to end. The waterway didn't act like a normal river. It was too wide, the current was too violently strong. They faced relentless attacks from indigenous tribes, including a fierce group of women warriors wielding bows and arrows, who reminded Orellana of the Amazons of ancient Greek myth. That is how the river got its name. But the most terrifying thing wasn't the people, it was the water itself. When Orellana finally reaches the end of his agonizing 8-month journey, he notices something impossible. For over 100 miles out into the Atlantic Ocean, the sea isn't salt, it is fresh water. A river so massive, so incomprehensibly powerful, that it literally pushes the ocean back. To understand how one waterway could reshape the Earth, you have to go back millions of years. Long before humans arrived, the Amazon didn't flow east into the Atlantic. It flowed west into the Pacific. But then, the tectonic plates shifted. The Andes Mountains violently erupted from the Earth. The river was trapped, forming a massive inland sea. Slowly, relentlessly, over millions of years. The water carved a new path backward, slicing through the continent until it reached the Atlantic. Today, the Amazon isn't just a river. It is a horizontal ocean. Every second, it discharges more than 215,000 cubic meters of water. Read that again, 215,000. Every single second. That is roughly 20% of all the liquid fresh water draining into the world's oceans. It is 5 times larger than the Congo River. It is 12 times larger than the Mississippi. During the wet season, it swells to 50 kilometers wide. You can stand on one bank and completely lose sight of the other. Can you imagine that? A river so vast it possesses its own horizon. For centuries, Western explorers looked at this dense tropical rainforest and saw a pristine, untouched wilderness, a green hell where human civilization was impossible. But they were wrong. When the first Europeans arrived, the Amazon was teeming with life. Millions of people lived along its banks in massive, interconnected networks. They didn't just survive in the forest, they engineered it. They created terra preta, a dark, incredibly fertile soil made from charcoal, pottery, and compost, turning the poor jungle dirt into rich agricultural land. They planted massive orchards. They cultivated the canopy. The Amazon we see today isn't entirely wild. It is an ancient, overgrown garden left behind by a forgotten empire. But when the Europeans brought their diseases, that civilization collapsed. The forest swallowed the cities. The vines covered the pottery. And the outside world forgot that anyone had ever mastered the river. Until, of course, they discovered something bleeding from the trees, something the modern world desperately needed. In the late 19th century, the Industrial Revolution is exploding. Factories are roaring. The very first automobiles are being born. And all of those machines need one thing to function. Rubber, tires, belts, insulation rubber is the new gold. And the absolute best place on Earth to find it is inside the Amazon rainforest. In 1879, the rubber boom erupts. The Amazon becomes the absolute center of global wealth. The city of Manaus, sitting in the middle of the jungle, transforms overnight. The rubber barons become obscenely rich. They build a lavish, staggering opera house using materials imported directly from Europe. They light their cigars with $100 bills. Manaus becomes the first city in Brazil to have electricity, long before many European capitals. It is the Paris of the jungle. But this wealth is built on blood. The system is called aviamento, a brutal form of debt peonage. Indigenous people and desperately poor migrants are forced deep into the forest to tap rubber trees. They are paid in overpriced supplies and trapped in an endless, suffocating cycle of debt. The conditions are horrifying. The torture is systemic. Whole tribes are enslaved, worked to death, and eradicated to fuel the factories of London and New York. The river runs thick with money, and the forest runs thick with misery. And then, the empire collapses. Not because of a revolution, because of a thief. In 1876, a British explorer named Henry Wickham smuggles tens of thousands of rubber tree seeds out of the Amazon and brings them to London. The British plant those seeds in their colonies in Asia, where they can be grown in neat, efficient plantations without the hazards of the deep jungle. By 1912, Asian rubber floods the market. The price plummets. The Amazonian rubber monopoly shatters. Overnight, the barons abandon their mansions. The opera house falls silent. The jungle creeps back in, devouring the European architecture just as it had devoured the indigenous cities centuries before. The river has won again. But the world wasn't done with the Amazon. They just needed bigger machines. In 1928, the richest man in the world decides he is going to tame the jungle. Henry Ford buys 2.5 million acres of land along the Tapajos River, a massive tributary of the Amazon. He intends to build a utopian American city in the middle of the forest, complete with hamburgers, square dances, and strict prohibition. He calls it Fordlândia. He pours millions of dollars into the project. He tries to grow rubber trees in neat, tidy rows, just like the British did in Asia. But Ford ignores the fundamental rule of the Amazon. In the wild, rubber trees grow far apart to prevent disease. By packing them together, Ford creates an all-you-can-eat buffet for leaf blight and caterpillars. The plantation is completely annihilated. The workers rebel against the strict American rules. Fordlândia becomes a colossal, embarrassing failure. Henry Ford never even visits the city he named after himself. He sells the land back to Brazil at a massive loss. The jungle reclaims the American dream, devouring the concrete and the assembly lines. So, who really won that war? Fast forward to the 1970s, the military government of Brazil looks at the vast green expanse of the Amazon and sees a problem. It is too empty. It is too wild. The government adopts a terrifying slogan: integrate to not surrender. They fear that if they don't occupy the forest, foreign powers will take it. They decide it is time to conquer the river once and for all. They launch one of the most audacious, reckless engineering projects in human history, the Trans-Amazonian Highway. A paved road slicing thousands of kilometers straight through the heart of the rainforest. The plan is to relocate millions of poor families from the drought-stricken Northeast, give them land, and turn the jungle into the agricultural breadbasket of the world. They promise a new frontier, a new life. But the Amazon does not surrender to asphalt. The soil beneath the canopy is deceivingly poor. It relies on the constant fall of leaves to stay fertile. Once the trees are cleared, the torrential rains wash away all the nutrients. The crops fail. The highway itself becomes a logistical nightmare. During the wet season, the road turns into an impassable swallowing river of red mud. Bridges are washed away. Vehicles are buried. The dream collapses, leaving thousands of desperate settlers stranded in the wilderness, fighting for survival against malaria and starvation. But the road opened a door. And through that door comes the modern war for the Amazon. Loggers, miners, cattle ranchers, the destruction accelerates at a staggering pace. But the most devastating weapon isn't a chainsaw, it's concrete. In the 2010s, the Brazilian government pushes forward with the Belo Monte Dam on the Xingu River, one of the Amazon's most vital tributaries. It is designed to be one of the largest hydroelectric plants on the planet. To build it, they have to divert 80% of the river's flow. Read that again, 80%. They flood over 500 square kilometers of land. The conflict is brutal. Indigenous tribes and riverine communities, who have lived in harmony with the water for generations, fight back. They protest, they block roads, they launch massive legal battles. We never compete against the river, the politicians say. We are bringing clean energy, but the reality is different. Fish stocks collapse. Waterways dry up in some places and flood in others. Thousands of people are displaced, their homes drowned under stagnant reservoirs. The Belo Monte Dam stands as a monument to human arrogance. We took the most powerful water system on Earth and tried to put it in a chokehold. We thought we could extract its energy without consequences. We were wrong. Today, something strange and terrifying is happening to the Amazon. The river that carries more water than any other is beginning to thirst. We are seeing unprecedented droughts. Tributaries that have flowed for millions of years are turning into cracked mud. Communities that rely on boats for transportation are suddenly stranded. Millions of fish die, baking in the shallow pools left behind. Here is where it gets dark. The Amazon isn't just a river on the ground, it is a river in the sky. The millions of trees in the rainforest act as a massive pump, sucking water from the soil and sweating it out into the atmosphere. These flying rivers carry more water than the Amazon itself, driving weather patterns across the entire South American continent and regulating the global climate. But as we cut down the trees, as we dam the tributaries, as we heat the planet, that pump is breaking. The forest is losing its ability to generate its own rain. Parts of the dense tropical rainforest are slowly, agonizingly turning into dry savanna. The system is unraveling. We spent 500 years trying to conquer the Amazon. We hacked at it, paved it, dammed it, and burned it. We extracted its gold, its rubber, its timber, and its energy. We thought it was an infinite resource, an endless expanse of water and green that could absorb any amount of abuse. But the river is finally showing its limits. The Amazon River remains the undisputed king of the world's waterways. It still pushes the ocean back. It still commands 20% of the Earth's fresh water. But it is bruised. It is fractured. The empire of water is facing an existential crisis. The unresolved question of our time is not whether we can tame the Amazon. We've proven that we can't. The question is whether we can stop destroying it before it crosses a tipping point from which it can never return. Will we learn to live with the river? Or will we be the generation that watches the greatest waterway on Earth run dry? You tell us what you think in the comments below. If this story intrigued you, wait until you hear about the buried secrets of the Sahara Desert. Tap the video on your screen to watch that next. Keep your minds open, and until we meet again.